What is going on, New York Giants fans and all you delusional New York Giants fans out there?
Let's go Giants! Let's go Giants! Let's go Giants! Let's go Giants!
D-Illa here. So the schedule comes out tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I'm sure at some point in time it'll be leaked out before 8 o'clock even rolls around. We've known what opponents we're going to be playing this year. We've known this for a good period of time now. We just don't know what order these opponents will be in. I've had a chance to look at these teams that will be playing in 2024, and there's one common denominator that all these teams have. It's a main focal point that this team is really going to have to figure out a way to stop, and that's stopping the run. This team ranked last year 29th in the league in terms of stopping the run. Up front with their 4-down linemen, linebackers at times had issues. Bobby Okereke obviously started off kind of slow, definitely got it together as the year went on. McFadden played well at times, but there were times where he also struggled in the running game. Often getting lost in traffic, not shooting the right gaps when they were opening up, and attacking the ball carrier in the backfield. Much of this front seven remains the same heading into 2024. Now on the offensive side of the ball, we are definitely going to have to figure out how to establish drives and keep this defense off the field to keep them as fresh as possible, so we can stop this plethora of running backs that we will be facing in 2024. And if we don't, it's going to be a recipe for disaster, because this season we are going up against some of the best running backs that this league has to offer. We start off first with Saquon Barkley. We're going to get him 2 times this year. We've got Alvin Kamara with the Saints, even though I feel like Alvin Kamara isn't exactly the running back that he used to be. I think he's definitely slowed down a bit. I'm not necessarily as worried about Alvin Kamara with the Saints, and I'm not that much of a believer in the Saints anyways. I think the Giants ultimately could be a better team than the Saints in 2024. I think that team's going to have a lot of struggles, especially with their cap issues, and I think you're going to see, just from a talent standpoint, their cap issues, not being able to bring in talent, it's definitely going to affect them on the football field. The Bucs have a guy like Rachaad White. Good running back, has a nose for finding lanes, is a very good pass catcher from out of the backfield. Baltimore Ravens, Derrick Henry, one of the best backs in this league, has been for over a handful of years now at this point. We all know what we're going to get in Derrick Henry when we play him. When you're playing a team like the Ravens with a good solid defense and a good solid running game, he's going to be a tough running back to stop. And don't forget about Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell will be coming back from injury this season, so I don't think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. So at the midpoint, he might be ready to go. So that could definitely be a pretty good 1-2 punch with that team if Keaton Mitchell comes back and looks anything like the player that he was towards the end of the year last year. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, not exactly very strong at quarterback. We don't know exactly what J.J. McCarthy is going to be, but we all know what a guy like Aaron Jones brings to a football team. And Aaron Jones is definitely a step up from a guy like Dalvin Cook or Alexander Mattison. Dalvin Cook, a guy who's definitely ran out of gas here lately over the past couple of years. You saw that with the Jets last year. Really didn't amount to much when they acquired him. And, they decided to bring in Aaron Jones after the Alexander Mattison, Chris Chandler, experiments really didn't work out. They went out and got themselves a good solid running back. We'll just see if Aaron Jones can stay healthy for the majority of the year. That's going to be a big-time question for him. Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs in this league, hands down when he's healthy. Put him behind a guy like Anthony Richardson, it makes him that much more dangerous. So the running game is going to be a big-time factor in that Colts game also. There's no doubt in my mind about that. It's going to be tough just to stop Anthony Richardson himself. As big as he is, as fast as he is, and as powerful as he is, then you talk about him handing the ball off to a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who's no small guy within himself, who has wheels also. He's a very tough runner to bring down himself. Seattle Seahawks boast 2 very good running backs, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. Didn't see much out of Charbonnet last year. Obviously, it was his rookie season. Had a few games where he filled in for Kenneth Walker while he was injured. Was kind of productive here and there. Didn't have too many good games. But you could see where the talent was with Zach Charbonnet. You could see he had potential to turn into a pretty good running back in this league. And I think he will continue to show that going into 2024. But that's going to be a run-dominant team in the Seattle Seahawks. They have a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba going into his second year, paired up with DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, obviously, is getting another year older. Wasn't quite as productive last year. And I really expect Jackson Smith-Njigba to really step up and become that solid 1B option for that football team outside of DK Metcalf. Panthers ultimately traded up to get Jonathan Brooks in the second round, traded with the Indianapolis Colts. And we also play the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2 guys, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, a physical little bowling ball. He's a runner that's very similar to a guy like Ahmad Bradshaw. Oftentimes when I think about Jaylen Warren, that's exactly who I always compare him to. Size-wise, power-wise, they're very similar. Speed-wise, even. I mean, they're two similar backs. Even catching the ball from coming out of the backfield, they are damn near identical. Even the Commanders, man, with Chris Rodriguez. I mean, I wouldn't sleep on that guy. He's going into his second year. He had some pretty decent games last season. I don't think they're going to rely. Well, I mean, I think they'll still rely on Brian Robinson, but I think that team is really going to try to move towards a guy like Chris Rodriguez. I think they like that kid. Antonio Gibson obviously went. Where did he go to? I'm not exactly sure where Antonio Gibson went. I'll have to look that up. He may have gone to the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. The Commanders also brought on Austin Eckler. I'm not that big on Eckler anymore. I think Eckler's past his prime. Obviously, I don't think the Commanders will use him in the same style that the Chargers did for years, relying on him in the passing game as much as the Chargers did. I think they'll just use him more as a situational player, and maybe like third down situations when they need a guy to leak out of the backfield and maybe catch the defense by surprise with a completion to their running back to gain a first down. I think that's kind of the way the Commanders are really going to use him, but I think they'll lean more on guys like Chris Rodriguez and Brian Robinson on that football team. Bengals have Zach Moss. There's another guy that's there that he has a pretty high yards per carry average, if I'm not mistaken. I can't think of his name right now. It's completely slipping my mind. Cowboys, obviously, their situation at running back is kind of murky, but they're bringing back Zeke. They have Rico Dowdle, Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman kind of disappeared there for a while. Came back with the Rams last season. Behind that Dallas offensive line, I mean, they brought in some pieces in the draft, in free agency, so they're trying to build that offensive line back up. I think that team is really going to center a lot of their offensive game plan around the running game, around Zeke. Zeke last season averaged 3.5 yards a carry. A guy like Saquon Barkley last year averaged 3.9 yards a carry. I talked about this, towards the end of the year, how close their yards per carry averages were, and it was kind of crazy. I mean, when you think about it. And the other thing is Zeke also had more receiving yards than Saquon Barkley. I mean, it's kind of amazing that that's even fact, but it is. I think they're definitely going to lean more on the running game. Of course, they're going to have guys like CeeDee Lamb involved in the passing attack. CeeDee Lamb came out, looked like one of the best wide receivers that this league had to offer last year. CeeDee Lamb finally turned into the wide receiver that a lot of people thought he could when he was drafted. Jake Ferguson also, definitely started to come on towards the end of the year at tight end for that team. Played pretty well the entire season. He really started to make some noise towards the end of the year. And he's definitely a solid pass catcher for that team. But, man, when you talk about all these teams, these are teams that can run the ball down your throats. And we're not even talking about the wide receiver options on these football teams. Some of these teams have some of the best options as well at the wide receiver position that this league has to offer. Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson at tight end, Bucks, Mike Evans, Eagles, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Ravens, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Falcons, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. There's a lot of talent on these teams, and that defense is definitely going to have to step up. Now, I know Shane Bowen, he's not a guy that blitzes very much. He tries to get pressure with his front four. I've come out and said a lot that I believe this team, regardless of bringing in Brian Burns, to me, I think this team kind of made that move a little bit too early. To me, that's a move that a more developed team makes, when they're trying to chase a championship. Not a team that's necessarily in our situation. I don't believe we're in that position right now where we're chasing a championship. Not at all. But, they did what they did. They brought on Brian Burns. I'm never against bringing on another pass rusher. I love pass rushers. I'm a Giants fan. I know all y'all are Giants fans out there, and y'all enjoy the pass rush just as much as I do. So it's going to be exciting to have two guys coming off the edge, along with Azeez Ojulari, that can get to the quarterback as consistently as, these two guys potentially can. They're definitely going to have to feed off one another. At times, they're really going to have to work on not being overly aggressive and commanding their running lanes on the outside and trying their best not to leave gaping holes in between the left end spot, your left defensive tackle spot, your right end spot, or your right defensive tackle spot. You can't leave gaping holes in between those areas for quarterbacks to leak out of the backfield through or for the running game to execute through those areas. This team's definitely going to have to step it up this year. Definitely have to improve from that 29th ranked defense last year in terms of the running game. It's going to be a tough task for this team to actually do that, I believe. But, you never know. Maybe things will improve from last year. I'm trying to be a little bit more optimistic in this video. I think this defense has potential. I'm not necessarily sold on the secondary. I've kind of expressed my displeasure when it comes to that. some of the moves that they made in the draft. So it is what it is.